Hey guys, how's it going? So in this video, I just want to briefly, I'm going to try to be brief, outline why I use the Kemper, profiling amp, why I love it, why I think it's a great tool, what it is not, and then some things that I don't like about it as well, and just try to, I'm just going to try to overview why and give some reasons why you should get used to seeing it on this channel, and you will be seeing it a lot because it's a fantastic tool, fantastic piece of gear, one of my favorites ever. All right, so the model that I have the Kemper Stage now. I did have the toaster, the non-powered toaster before, and found somebody that actually wanted to trade their Stage for a toaster, which was a great deal for me. It provided a lot of benefits since I use it live. Specifically, I run pedals with my Kemper, and I run delays and reverbs and other stuff sometimes in the effects loop of the Kemper. So when you're playing live, unless you're in a very, very small room and don't have very far to run your cable length, you can actually it can require a lot of cable to get your rig hooked up and together. So along with I used to have the Kemper toaster and the remote, which is basically, the remote is essentially this portion right here of the Stage. The remote comes from Kemper with a 25-foot Cat 5 cable, and so I actually had a couple 25-foot long 1/4 inches sitting around, and so I actually made a snake that I ran, that I put in one piece of conduit or whatever, and basically made a snake for myself that had my effects loop send and return, as well as the Kemper remote cable. It worked very well, and it worked very well for a long time. So if you have a toaster or rack and you run the remote on stage now, I recommend doing that. It saved me a lot of hassle. It was pretty easy to set up and tear down. But going to the Stage, it actually eliminated all that, which was very helpful. Did it help my tone? It probably helped it not be as dark, being able to eliminate 50 feet of cable. But yeah, I don't know. It just seems to be easier, and this stays on a pedal board with other pedals around it, and that helps. It's just easy. I just pull out my pedal board, and it has everything on it that I need. I do bring a cab to gigs. I bring a cab and a Seymour Duncan power amp to gigs, but I don't need to. And for a long time I didn't. I just ran the Kemper and then used in-ears with the band I was playing with. Still do that sometimes if I'm feeling really lazy and don't care if I have my cab on stage or not, or if I'm playing a small room, or whatever. Most of the time it's because I'm lazy. That seems to be a theme. As I'm editing through videos, I find that that's a theme. I like convenience. Maybe I'm not lazy. I like convenience. So let me talk about my rig before I had the Kemper, and that hopefully will kind of help paint the scene and fill in the gaps. So I play around the DC area with, I've been playing with a number of booking agency bands, playing guitar, mainly cover bands and that kind of thing. I've been doing that in addition to playing with some artists and different stuff. I really cut my teeth playing cover gigs. I think a lot of us probably do. And that's how I became proficient at playing drums. And when I wanted to actually dive into electric guitar, probably 11 or 12 years ago or so, I had this idea that I wanted to start playing out and playing with bands. It gets you it's sort of like a boot camp, and get you have to get good quick. You got to learn the songs. You gotta, you just kind of have to do it. So since that was the approach that helped me become a proficient drummer, I thought, hey, maybe I can just play with bands, and that will help me become proficient at playing guitar live as well. So playing with a lot of these agency bands, you have to cover a wide range of music, because whether you're playing for one band or you're playing for multiple, or you get calls to fill in for other bands, you have to cover a wide palette of music. And so you got to have, for me, that boiled down to a few things. You got to have really good, I like to have really good crystal clean tones. But then also you may need to, cover things on the complete other end of the spectrum. Think Guns N' Roses and all of that sort of stuff, depending on what band you're playing with and what the gig is. So you have a lot of ground to cover. So my last rig, what I finally arrived at after years and years of this, the gear journey, finding my sound, figuring out the rig that worked for me. Here's a picture of the pedal board and kind of the rig that I was playing before the Kemper. I had a massive, it was a Pedal Train Pro sized board, so it was like 3 feet wide or something. I had a wireless system on it. I had a number of overdrives. I had a couple delays. I had a reverb pedal. I had some modulation effects and some things for one-off songs. Something that I would only use once or twice a night. And then I had a fuzz pedal on there as well, I'm sure. But that board was huge, and it sounded great. But when you have that many analog effects, especially, when you put your pedal board in the case, you throw some cables in there, you throw it in the car, you unload, you set up, all this stuff, your knobs move. And when you are stacking multiple gain stages to get from that crystal clean, the way your amp's set, to really, really high gain, and doing that with, stacking 2 or 3 overdrives, little tweaks to one of your gain stages, for example, can kind of throw off the entire thing that you're going for. And so you basically have to set up your pedal board, and when you get to the gig, kind of just dial everything in, go through your gain stages, make sure that I would make sure if I needed certain delay presets that they were good to go. And I had a trusty DD20, and so that was never an issue. But just kind of making sure that everything's copacetic, all the cables work, all that stuff. I had a looper on my board to eliminate if I had a patch cable issue. So if I had a cable go bad, I could just kind of disengage that looper channel and good to go. So that was my setup. And as far as amp, I think the amp the last tube amplifier that I was playing, I was gigging a lot live, was a Marshall JCM 2000. It was a DSL 50. DSL 50 watt head and a 212 cab. Great amp, but I could never really get it loud enough in most of the places we played to really make it sound great. You could get pretty solid you could get pretty solid clean tones out of it, but I could never quite get it to almost break up where it was nice and full and rich, because it was just too loud for a lot of those venues. And I was playing multiple guitars a night, so normally I would bring a Stratocaster and a Les Paul style guitar. It was a lot. I'd have certain drive pedals I liked with my Strat, certain ones I liked with my Les Paul. Had to kind of set them somewhere in the middle, to make them work with both, or in case I broke a string or something like that. I mean, the rig was it was wild, man. So enter the end of 2017 when I decided to buy a Kemper and put a bunch of analog gear up for sale. It was pretty expensive at the time, but I got one used. It was the most expensive, was it? Yeah, I think it was the most expensive single piece of gear I'd ever purchased up to that point, including guitars. But I ended up actually selling a bunch of the pedals that you saw on my board, and I almost broke even, actually. I got really close. I paid like $1,900 for it. And it was loaded up with M-Brit profiles, and came with the remote. I mean, it was a pretty good deal at the time. But I all but broke even, I believe, when I ended up selling all the gear I didn't need anymore because I had the Kemper and the Kemper replaced it. So let's talk real quick about, all right, so how did I take what was formerly what I was doing with a bunch of pedals, and how did the Kemper sort of simplify that? So you can think of this line right here. This is one reason why the Kemper is so easy. And if you've used the Helix before, if you use the Axe FX, you kind of build a signal chain. I actually love the Helix software. That's one, HX Edit, I think it's called. That's one area where I actually think Line 6 may have a leg up on Kemper is with the software. I think the software is actually easier to use and just better all around. But the Kemper, rig manager, it's totally fine. It works great. No big deal. You can still visualize your signal chain on it as well. But basically, from the input of your guitar all the way through, so walking through this, I have, in terms of replacing things that were on my pedal board before, I have my volume and wah pedal. There's a slight compressor in here. It's barely on there. I know I talk about not liking compressors a lot. I just have a very light compression on this. I have a drive pedal. I have chorus pedal. As you can see, I like, where's my deluxe reverb's back here somewhere. So you can see I like, that's, if I'm going to use one amp, it's that style tone. This has my, Fender clean style, blackface amplifier right there. It has cabinet, so it basically has a speaker cabinet emulation. You can load IRs on it, whatever. They both sound good. I use both cabs and I use IRs. It just depends on what it's for. But anyway, right here I have this block is actually my effects loop. So if you want to enable the effects loop on the Kemper, you have to use a block to do it. But so this basically, I have it off right now because last time I was using the Kemper, I was just plugged straight into it. It's a great practice tool. It's easy. I take it when I travel sometimes. So I have the effects loop off right now, but it's right there. Next, I have a EQ. I'm going to talk about this in a minute, about things I don't like about the Kemper, but spoiler alert, it's solved with this button. Next, I have delays and I have a bit of reverb on here. So I literally have an entire pedal board signal chain right here at my feet. It can do the job that my whole pedal board used to do. Well, the main way the Kemper simplified that was I no longer actually even needed to bring an amp. That meant I didn't have to carry my Marshall head. That meant I didn't have to carry a 212 cabinet out of my apartment, down the stairs, to the car, all that stuff. I didn't even need to carry that anymore. So I didn't. I went straight Kemper into PA and was using in-ear monitors with my band. So that was a huge load right away. And all the variances that come from dealing with a tube amp and sometimes having unreliability, or it's sounding different in different rooms, or mic placement on a speaker changing, somebody during a set, the bass player or myself, moving on stage and accidentally bumping into the little stand that I had my 906 on in front of my 212 cab. All that stuff was eliminated. So I knew that it was amazing. I could plug the Kemper in every night, and dude, it just worked, and it sounded the same every single night. It built my confidence like crazy. I could roll in to setup, plug in, I knew exactly what it was going to sound like, and could focus on just getting ready for the gig with the other stuff, not related to my rig. What songs are we playing? Are there any new songs in the set list? Are there, stuff like that. Focusing on, hey, what songs in the set list am I going to start? That way I can kind of plan for how I'm going to organize performances, when I'm going to tune, all that stuff. So it was really nice, man. It let me focus on the performance and not so much on the rig. And that is of immense value. And it inspires a lot of confidence. I think that's kind of priceless. So, all right, so let's talk about how I replaced drives real quick. So obviously the Kemper has built-in amps. There's a ton of videos on Kemper, so I'm not going to overview exactly what this thing is. I'm just going to talk about how I used it. So let's talk about basically now I use you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are called slots in every performance. I would call a performance a set of 5 presets. I think that it makes sense. This is a performance that I can set up, and I could play this one performance on every song all night. It has kind of everything I need as a basic starting point to get me through a gig, to get me through a rehearsal, to play with an artist I've never played with before, to play songs I've never played before. This one performance, I can do it all. This is dialed in for my Strats as well as my Cower Corona. They work really well with this performance, but so this can get me through everything all night. But I also have copies of this that are dialed in for other guitars. So if I'm going to switch to, from one of those to a double humbucker guitar, something like my PRS, I can simply, I can just simply push a button. And let me find an example so you know I'm not lying to you. So here it says Strat, and then I can get to one where it says LP Les Paul. That's basically a double humbucker style performance. So the way that I have always used the Kemper, I found it works really well for me. I have the crystal clean tone I was talking about as 1 here. Then I have a bit of a more crunchy tone, or in this case I have a lot of wet effects and a bit of chorus on 2, but it's basically the same clean signal but adds a few things and changes a few things. 3 is like a cranked tweed amp. So think a lot of really tube driven, thick, overdriven Fender tweed style sound. So that's what I get out of my slot 3 here, and I add drives on top of that, which really can push me into the territory of medium high to high gain. So basically from 1 I have crystal clean tone, to 3 I have over the top high gain tone at my fingertips at any time. That's incredible, and it sounds exactly the same, and there are 2 different amps even. So I have 2 different amp tones in one single performance right at my feet. So yeah, I basically progress the level of gain from 1 to 3 generally, but in order to make this where I can use it all night, I have a clean lead sort of preset here, and then I have a really dirty, giving it everything I've got, really dirty solo tone here. So from crystal clean to heavy on the gain, to clean lead, and then dirty lead here. This one performance has everything I need. So in terms of my pedal board, I mean, it literally does everything. When you see the picture of my massive pedal board, I can replicate literally all of that within the Kemper, within this box right here, and never have to even add pedals to it if I wanted. I add pedals because I like it. I think it sounds better and it feels better and it's more fun. But you don't need to. You could just buy a Kemper stage and dial everything in and use it for gigs. I've done that plenty of times with an expression pedal, just to give me some stuff to play with, and it works great. It's amazing. But in here I have, so let's just look at this for a second. So I'll give you an example of how I've replaced basically everything on my pedal board. So in this one performance, I have, so I run an expression pedal. So it's over here, so I can kind of, whatever. It's a volume pedal all the time, the way I have it, the way that I have it configured. If I press this button right here, this little orange button, it enables this effect. It's actually a wah effect. So by pressing this one button and then messing with my expression pedal, I now have a wah pedal. So don't need that on the board. And I also don't need 2 separate. I don't need a volume and a wah. They're all in one little, where's my little tiny Dunlop Mini? Wherever that thing is. Oh, it's over there. So that's great. All right. So next, right here, this is a overdrive. This is a Blues Breaker type overdrive. So you can dial in different presets with those. I can have multiple of them if I wanted. I can actually put 2 of them on the same button if I want to, and have different levels of gain, all that stuff. It's the amount of configurability is insane. But for this instance, I have drive pedals built in. So I have a wah pedal and a volume pedal built in. I have overdrive built in. This blue this button right here is actually, this is chorus. The Kemper has a really great vintage chorus. I don't really use, real crazy, wobbly, chorus effects. I have Analog Man mini chorus on my main board, and I use that a lot, but it's a vintage style chorus, and this does the job as well. I use both over the course of a night, and I guarantee the crowd has no idea when I use one or the other. So that's great. So I've got that in there. The thing that I didn't mention that I had on my pedal board, I had a Morpheus drop tune, which basically I would use it to drop my whole guitar half a step or whole step down, depending on what the need was. The Morpheus drop tune actually is, after trying lots of things, Electro-Harmonix Pitchfork, the Digitech drop, what else have I tried? A bunch of stuff. The Morpheus drop tune I found is the best. It tracks the best, it sounds the best, it doesn't color your tone, it colors your tone the least out of all of them. I don't need that anymore either. I actually have performances set up that I use. What I do is I basically have a copy of the I have a copy of the performance I just walked you through, and then I'll have it where I have a copy of it where there is it basically drops my tuning of my guitar for me using the Kemper transpose effect. So I have it where I have the exact same performance, but it's every single slot is dropped half a step, and I have another performance where it's dropped a whole step. Yes, I have messed with, and I know that you can simply lock the transpose so it can be used globally and all of that. I've run into some issues with that before. It would be great if I only needed half step down, say, in a gig, but if I need multiple and need to change them and have to bend down and turn knobs, I'm not into that. I just like having everything ready to go into whatever song it is, whatever I'm using. But either way, the pitch shifting is amazing in this. I do have a video coming up on that, and with some live gig video to show how I use it. Works really, really well. So anyway, I basically replaced everything that was on my pedal board and have the capability to do that within the Kemper, but with a lot more reliability. I can have cranked amp tone with no stage volume. People kind of scoff at that and laugh at that, but the Kemper sounds amazing, and it reacts to your guitar in a very, very great way. People say that the digital solutions, that they don't interact with your guitar, there's not that same kind of feedback loop there. I agree that it's not the same as a tube amp exactly, but if you run a cab, I can tell you it acts just like a guitar amp. Because it's basically generating sound that your pickups on your guitar are picking up, and yeah, there's some interplay there that happens with the Kemper. If you look at the video I did with Jeremy Hairston, I turn on the, I remember when I turned on the Analog Man, the Sunbender, as soon as I turned it on, you could hear that kind of feedback cloud, just like you would hear plugged into an amp. And that's all the Kemper. It's really great. So next, I want to get into what the Kemper is and what the Kemper's not. Certainly not an exhaustive list. Fans of the program here. Hey, do you like the Kemper? Would you like it or not? Come here, come tell us. Come on. Oh yeah. Winnie likes the Kemper. All right, what are you gonna do? You gonna sniff some stuff? You gonna tell us what's up? All right, so this is one fan of the program. This is Winola. Here, so you can see her. This is Winnie. She's very cute, but she's very much in the way a lot of the time. It's really not great, but she's very cute, so we let her get away with it. All right, you can get down. All right, I want to take a minute, and I think next we should tackle what the Kemper is and what it is not. I would not claim that the Kemper is the same thing. It definitely replaces your amp in a live situation, but it's not the same thing as, especially at home, listening to an amplifier with your ears. It's not the same thing. It's not literally, it's not, an amplifier into a speaker cabinet, and that's what you hear. It captures an entire, what I would say is like kind of an entire studio signal chain. What you're actually hearing is an amp even with pedals in front of it, maybe, if that's part of the signal chain. You're hearing an amp mic'd up. Those mics are then run through normally pre's and mixed and everything else. There can even be a really fancy, mic pair. There probably is on most of the profiles that I use, where there's two mics. So you're hearing an amplifier that is mic'd up and run through preamps. Even if it's coming out of the Kemper cone, which is the speaker selection made for them, even if that's coming out of my the cabinet that I bring live with the Kemper, and you're hearing it with your ear, it doesn't sound the same as if you had the amp that profile was of and we're standing right in front of it. It's not the same thing. Is that a bad thing? No. Again, I'm trying to eliminate the entire signal chain, miking up speakers, all that stuff. Therefore, I like that it's built in to the Kemper. So what it is, so that's basically what it is and what it's not. We kind of did those together in one, whatever. So that's fine. All right, what do I not like about the Kemper? So I guess the only thing I'll say about all right, there's two things. And they're really nitpicky and really dumb. But as far as we talked about the whole, kind of you can see the signal chain here. I don't like that I cannot move the amp and cabinet and delay and reverb, blocks. Specifically the amp and cabinet ones. I mean, you can put delays up here and whatever if you want to get weird. But while there is technically, I guess, there are 10 blocks, 4 here, 2 here. There are 4 in front of the amp and there are 4 after the amp. You cannot put, say, 6 in front of the amp and 2 after. That is a limitation that is unfortunate. That's one thing that the Helix and the HX Stomp from line 6 definitely get around. You have a certain number of blocks and you can use them however you want to. I think that is a limitation of the Kemper, to be certain. And that's just because I rarely am longing for more pre-amplifier slots or blocks here, but I do often wish I had more post cabinet, post amplifier, post cabinet blocks. The reason for that is this one is locked. You'll see. If you push the lock button here, it will highlight. Now let me get my hand out of the way. It will highlight in the signal chain the things that are lit. And so I don't know how well this is going to translate in the camera, but basically only this one light is lit up right now. I have this locked on every single performance and every single rig I use. So that eats one of the 4 slots right there is the effects loop. All right, so yeah, the effects loop clogging up that one block leads me into the next thing that I don't like about the Kemper. Even though it's totally not a fair critique, because it is the same with every digital solution I've tried, the Helix and the Fractal being the kind of the top dogs, the main 2 there. I haven't tried the Neural, so don't at me. Don't care. So in every single one of these solutions that basically you're supposed to be able to go out of and go straight to a FR solution where you have a full EQ range. What I find is, and that's how the Kemper and the Line 6 stuff works and all that, there's a lot more information in terms of EQ frequency than a guitar speaker gives you. And in that way, it's very different. Specifically, I use, and I have to eat up a block for this, I leave an EQ on all the time. And what it does is really reins in a lot of those specific frequencies that I don't like, that I think I hear that don't really sound natural like they would coming out of a guitar amp. So basically, I use this block as an EQ to specifically cut down on a lot of the really, really high frequency information and make it sound to my ears more like hearing a guitar amp proper in front of my ears. So I just said it's not like an amp in the room, but I try to make it sound more like an amplifier, like a guitar speaker would to my ear. If you want more on that, go Tone Junkie is the channel for you. HW covers a lot extensively on this. He talks about this stuff a lot. So shout out HW. Thanks for all the great profiles and for all the good help. But you'll notice I use his profiles and the Embrit ones a lot, and they often have EQs built in to their presets and their performances. I'm guessing for this reason. So that's really it. That's all I really don't like about it. I wish I could move the amplifier and cabinet stacks around. It would give me the ability to have more blocks before or after the amplifier and cabinet. But again, I already have 4 in front and 4 after, even though I basically eat 2 up on the back side. Whatever. I wish on the back side I could put another delay back there. I would love to have one of these buttons that was my sort of standard always on analog sounding delay, which I like to cut off sometimes if I want very dry signal. And I would like to have another button that has my like a dotted eighth built in. I use that a lot. That would be really helpful for me, but the Kemper doesn't really do that because I need to have reverb there, and I need to have my effects loop run after my amplifier, and I need to have an EQ there. If anybody knows a way around that and to solve that problem to free up a block after cabinet, please let me know. You would change my life. I will take you out to lunch. If you're virtual, I will buy you a set of strings, whatever, send them to your house. So one last thing, let's talk about how I use effects with the Kemper. And I mentioned a lot about the built-in effects. I actually use, you can see my pedal board here. I use drives and I use delays and other modulation in addition to the Kemper. I run drives, fuzz, envelope filter, chorus in front, and then I run delays and other things in the effects loop. The reason I do that is I think it sounds better. I think that having an analog drive a lot of the time sounds better than what's built in, and it feels better to me, so I do it. It's that simple. For another reason that I do that, and especially why I have external delays, the Kemper delays sound incredible. They are on par with any digital delay I've ever heard. It sounds amazing. However, if you like to sort of jam or be able to easily add delays in and have them global with no matter what other slot you go to, or other performances or whatever, if you don't want any, if you want that delay to sort of stay consistent and carry over and be able to tweak it on the fly, that's why I like having an ARP87. I think I have this guy here. I always will have one of those on my board. Well, if you're jamming with people, sometimes you just want to be able to have drives you can tweak really quick, things you can touch, things you can change that are global, without needing to mess around with presets and that kind of stuff, and saving and all storing stuff and locking effects. I don't like having to think about that when I'm jamming with people or when I'm in a rehearsal trying to engage with the band or with the artist. So pedals help me get around that. Plus I think they sound better. So that's why I do that. So let's end with this. Do I still use tube amps? Yes. The answer is yes, I do. Just recently I got my hands on this Deluxe Reverb. It's going to be in plenty of videos. I'll probably talk about the story of how I bought it. It's funny. It was purchased new in 2006, just like my 2006 Fender Strat was. And a bit of a similar story behind how I came to get such a clean, amazing condition amp. I'll do that in a later video, along with probably play my Sunburst Strat with it, because they both have a very similar story. But anyway, the answer is yes, I still use tube amps, and that's because of the thing, when I mentioned that there's nothing like having an amplifier in the room, hearing the guitar speaker hit your ear, being able to put it on the edge of breakup and run pedals in front of it and all that stuff. There's nothing like that. There's no replacement for that. I also love the Fender Spring Reverb. to me, it's actually one thing within the Kemper that kind of gets close. I actually mainly use hall reverb within the Kemper. There's nothing like, like Fender spring reverb to me. Or I had a PV Classic 30 for a long time, and that had really great spring reverb as well. There's no replacement for that. There's nothing like hearing that speaker hit your ears in the room. So I love it. I use it a lot. I basically play the deluxe reverb at home, and I don't think I'll ever take it out to a gig for a lot of reasons. You'll sort of, as I put out some more tips and tricks videos about how I use this stuff live, specifically my lead channels and stuff, it would be a headache to go back to trying to replicate that on a pedal board at this point, since I've been so spoiled, honestly. So yes, I use tube amps, use them at home. They're great, love them. This is not a tube amp. That is not the same thing as this. They serve very different purposes for me, and I love them both. So yeah, I wanted to do this because you'll be seeing the Kemper on a ton of videos, and wanted to explain why I love it so much and why you're seeing it so much. It also helps that I can plug it right into my interface to track videos with. That is a major plus. Although it does sound great in the room also. You'll hear with Jeremy, that video with Jeremy I've mentioned like 3 times already because I was just editing it today. So it's on my brain. But the Kemper is the Kemper is coming through the Kemper cone in my live cab, the one I take to shows. That's what you're hearing in the room, is actually the Kemper through a speaker. It's not an amplifier, but it sounds great. You'll hear it there. All right, guys. Yeah, thanks for bearing through all of my rambling about the Kemper and all of this. I'm certainly I have a lot of experience with it, but I'm learning new things all the time. So if you have tips for me, please let me know in the comments. I would love to learn from you, little tips and tricks and hacks that you have, things that you do live differently than I do. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please take a minute to copy the link and send it to someone. Send it to a friend that will also enjoy the video. I would much rather you do that instead of sharing it out on a social media platform, to all of your friends, followers, whatever. The way that I'd like to build community around the channel would be much more meaningful, I think, and much more focused. If you would just take a minute to copy this link and send it to someone who would enjoy it. That would mean a lot to me. It would help kind of keep things going. So, all right, thanks so much. Until next time.